It's our hot player episode. How to know if a hot player is for real. Can you trade away a hot player before he cools off? Plus, we'll have some updates on some minor league demotions, waiver wire picks, pitcher preview, and much more. Jason Collette joins us next on Beat the Shift. And welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast. I am your host, Ariel Cohen, and with me as always is Ruvain Guy. How are you, Ruvain?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing super fantastic. Disastrous softball game last night. It was a close game till the last inning, and you throw a pitch and it's up and in, and you think there's no way that guy's going to hit it, and he somehow clubbed it, and the wind took it a little bit, and fair ball down the left field line, and everybody scores, and we lose by a couple. But otherwise, softball's going well. How about you?
Well, my softball team actually won one game and was rained out one game, so I think we're doing well on that front. And, I mean, people are watching the NFL drafts, but I think I'm more interested in baseball because this year's NFL draft isn't as appealing as past years.
Aaron Rodgers coming to New York. Definitely a big story here. If you are a Jets fan, or even if you're a football fan in New York, that should be a lot more interesting than the Jets had been in the past.
Yes.
All right, we've got a great show tonight. Joining us, you know him from RotoWire and from the Sleeper in the Bus podcast. Welcome to the show again, Jason Collette. How are you, Jason?
Hey, I'm doing well tonight, guys. How you doing?
Fantastic. And we're talking before the show, but hey, you're Rays, man. Rays are doing great. You must be jumping up and down every night.
This is where I get upset because I could have gone through fantasy draft season and drafted all the Rays and just said, you know what, I'm a homer, whatever. And if you'll recall, when we saw one another in Florida, I ended up taking maybe 5 guys, and a couple of people were like, oh, Jay's just taking all of his Rays again. And, maybe I was just an idiot savant because I knew this season was going to be so great for them at the plate. But in all seriousness, this has been amazing to watch, considering there were so many times last year when they scored 1 or 0 runs. I think it was like 34 times last year, and now they're just like, even we're recording this, and they're beating the White Sox yet again. It's 12-2, and they're just beating them like a drum. And it's fun, and it's helping my fantasy teams, ones where I did invest in Rays. I'm doing really well in, but I know it's not going to last forever, but I'm going to enjoy the ride, and it's a lot better than let's say you're a White Sox fan and you're going to be 7-19. You're an A's fan, you're not even going to have a team in your area in 2 years, and that sucks. So it could be a lot worse, but it's been a fun baseball season overall. I don't know what you guys think, but I'm really enjoying this baseball season.
Yeah. Currently, according to the Fangraphs projections, the Rays have a 94% chance of making the playoffs. The ATC projections give them an 89% chance, which is one of the top in baseball. Braves, all the projection systems give the Braves as, they're definitely making the playoffs, like 96%. But
they should. I get the 88, 94, the winning streak. Yeah, the Rays won 13 in a row to come out at 14. But Milwaukee did too in 1987. They didn't make the postseason. Now, different postseason structure back then when it was only 2 divisions. But Atlanta, they're doing well right now, and they don't even have a full roster. And then you look at what Houston did this week. Houston went on the road, went to Toronto, came to Tampa Bay, where Tampa Bay hadn't lost a game yet, shut them out twice, and Houston's doing this without Jose Altuve, without Yordan Alvarez in the Tampa Bay series at least. Michael Brantley's still not back on the roster. Ryan Presley hasn't exactly been 100%, and so they went on the road and just beat 2 excellent teams the way they did. Now they're coming home, and they've got the Phillies, I believe, coming to town tomorrow, and I forgot the other part of their matchup. But they're looking really good. The Astros are looking really good. So, the defending champs from last year and then the defending champs from 2 years ago. There's a reason why both of these teams are heavily favored to get deep in the postseason, because they're both really good teams.
And the parity that the Yankees are in 4th place when people picked them to win the division, and the Dodgers end of April, they're only at 500. It's crazy. The parity, and the Pittsburgh Pirates at the beginning of the week, they had the best record in the National League without O'Neal Cruz, with O'Neal Cruz being already injured, that's just crazy.
Well, I'll tell you this. I think both of you guys could steal bases off the Dodgers this season. I don't know if you guys caught the entirety of that Pittsburgh series, but Pittsburgh was 12 for 12 in stolen bases off the Dodgers, and the Dodgers have thrown out 5 of 35 attempted stolen bases this year. Worst in baseball. And it is. And Will Smith's not going to fix that once he comes back because he's not a great thrower either. So yeah, that's where the Dodgers are going to have. That's one of the parts of their puzzle they're gonna have to fix somehow because it is costing them games. There's too many runners in scoring position for them.
Yeah, run, and teams making use of them, making use of the advantage by the new rules. I think it's a fun season. We mentioned Pittsburgh. Andrew McCutchen, he looks like his old self. I mean, he has 5 homers and 4 steals right now, which is a 30-homer, 25-steal pace. And he looks like Andrew McCutchen of old. I posted on Twitter today that, we saw this with Pujols. He had a resurgence in his last year at his old home in St. Louis. You had Buster Posey do that in his last year in San Francisco. I think you might be seeing it again with Andrew McCutchen. I mean, if you haven't picked him up in your league, I don't care if you're in a 10-team league, you got to pick up Andrew McCutchen. So that's baseball for you. And today is our hot player episode. We're going to talk about, last week we talked about all the cold players. So this week we're going to talk about the hot players and should you pick them up? Why not? We'll go through some player examples. But before that, going to our strategy section, going back to last week, Jake McCarthy. Jake McCarthy was demoted by the Diamondbacks, losing playing time every day, and eventually they said, that's it. We're just going to go with our guys, Pavin Smith, and who else will take over. Question is, ATC projections very high on Jake McCarthy, and looking at the ATC intervolatility metrics, other projection systems actually were fairly consistent. Projections agreed that he would be a great buy. He had a fantastic year last year. So many steals in so little time, and he had hit for a great average. I guess projections, took that too high. Or I don't know. The question to you is, Jason, why were the projections so high in Jake McCarthy? Why were people so high on him? Obviously, it was the wrong call. Or maybe not. The season's not yet over. And the question is, was it just... was it a projection error that, we really didn't project him correctly and we should have? Or is this a process error where, when you project 10 guys this high, you're going to get 6 right and 4 wrong. And so, yes, we took the L on McCarthy, but you got to trust the process because you're going to make more rights than wrong. What do you think is the case with him?
So he is just the type of player that I love to dig in. Now, for those listening, I don't do projection systems. I don't do projections, but I do like to look at a variety of projection systems. And when one guy jumps out of a system, jumps out in multiple systems, then I want to do a deep dive. And that's one of the things I did with McCarthy this year. And I looked and I came away very nonplussed when I looked at the overall picture, and I'll tell you why. I think, my personal thoughts is I believe that people were blinded by the speed because he came up, he stole all those bases. He made a lot of people a lot of money because he came up, you got him cheap, and he stole a bunch of bases, and the speed forgave a lot of things. But then you look at the overall, you go to a Statcast page, you look at the overall profile, and the only measure that he had above 50% was his speed. It was a 98% sprint speed. Everything else was light to dark blue. And that, to me, that was my first red flag when looking at McCarthy, saying, whoa, okay, the speed, speed, just like in pitching, velocity can forgive some mistakes. Well, speed on the base pass can forgive a lot of things too. If you make some bad contact, you can beat it out. You get on base. That's fine. But you saw all of that. And then even if you went back and looked at his minor league track record, it wasn't that great when you took into consideration the run environments that he did some of that damage. So to me, he was one guy. And the third factor that I don't want to forget is when I went and looked at his rolling weighted on base average last year, he really closed the season on a down note. He was at peak. And then the last few weeks of the season just took a tumble. And to me, it was like, okay, maybe the league started figuring him out at the end. So I had that red flag. I had his StatCast profile red flag. And I had the lack of significant track record in the minor league of success. And so I had him nowhere. Everybody else had him as a top 25 outfielder in the ADP. I was way out. I did not. There were chances where I could take him, and I skipped out, did not take him. So far, I'm justified in doing that. Not to say I've completely written off this player and we're never going to see him again, but there were enough red flags there if you did a deep dive on the player after looking at the projections to make your own judgment that this should not have been as big of a surprise as some people are making out to be.
All right, so according to you, this is a projection error. The projections were just unfairly giving him a real plus bonus for all those steals, focusing in on the last year or whatever. But if you did the process, which is vet the guy more, you should have come to see the red flags. And so guys who just relied on projections, that was not the right process, especially for this guy, right?
That's my story. I'm sticking to it. You got to try. I mean, everything. There's all these inputs. It's how you synthesize those inputs is what differentiates fantasy baseball players. Not saying I got this one right and I'm going to get them all right. No, there's a bunch of misses, and I tweeted about yesterday. There were a couple of things that I said, man, this guy's going to work this year, and it just hasn't so far. Season's not over, and
Right,
McCarthy
right.
could come back up and roar and make this look stupid. But right now, those red flags are blowing stiff in the wind because it's exactly what happened.
Yeah. Ruvain, do you agree with this assessment, or do you disagree?
I agree with part of it. The speed was the blinding aspect. It's the pun on words, blinding speed there. The speed was the blinding part there because of the fact that he did steal those bases last year. But if you look at the back of his baseball card, in 2021, he only batted .220. He had 3 stolen bases in 24 games. Then we see the 23 stolen bases in about 100 games last year. So we're like, okay, he's making the progression. He's making the jump. But he still batted .220 in those 25 games. Then last year, he did well. He did pretty well. He batted .283. He got the 23 stolen bases, 8 home runs. It was pretty good. And then maybe teams figured him out. They figured out how to pitch to him. They figured out how to, counteract what he did right in 2022 and revert back to the 2021 stats that he had. But if you do a deep dive in the numbers for this year, his xWOBA was higher this year than last year. He's had a horrible BABIP this year. He's had bad luck, and he's on a team, the Diamondbacks, that weren't expected to do anything right now, but they are in first place. As we're taping this, they're in first place. So they're actually trying to learn on the fly, and they can't have McCarthy up and learning on the job in the big leagues if they're trying to make a push. Now, he also probably had some of the other prospects and other players on the Diamondbacks roster breathing down his neck a little bit because they did acquire the former Rookie of the Year from the Mariners, and here maybe he was a little bit putting too much pressure on himself. I think that's very possible also. But the fact that the Diamondbacks are trying to push a little and win, and they're getting great pitching from Zach Gallen. He's having a great year so far, and they're pushing, and they're actually in first place because the Dodgers aren't doing that well. So it's possible that in a normal season, if the Diamondbacks weren't as good as they are to start the season, he still would be up, and he'd still be making the corrections on the major league level. But because of where the Diamondbacks are, he's a victim of the process, and he was sent back down.
So before I give my thoughts on McCarthy, just want to point out that this discussion of was the process right, was it parameter error, I think is even more important than just saying what should we do with him with fantasy now, and we'll talk about that too. But I think this discussion is really important. I actually think it's partially parameter, partially process. What I got wrong, and again, I'm taking the L on McCarthy. I mean, it was just totally wrong on him. The part of the process that was wrong was the playing time. That I assumed the Diamondbacks would be bad, so he would get the playing time anyways. He'll be there, and he'll accumulate the stolen bases, even if he doesn't hit for power, which, I really didn't think he would be. But he'll at least get you 25, 30 stolen bases, and he was going at such a discount. I wasn't paying full price for him, right? The projections showed he was $7 or $5, $6, $7 more than I paid. I bought him where I could at a good discount. Hard to pass up big discounts. If it was only $1 over $2, well, I'm not going to bet on a rookie or a guy with limited experience on that. But when it's that much and the projections agreed so much, usually this is a good buy, right? I think the process is right. This is when to buy. But the playing time, which projections don't get right 100% of the time, that was an assumption that it would be there, and it wasn't, because the Diamondbacks are doing better. They don't have time to fool around now and say, let McCarthy get right. No, let's play who we have now that's hot. McCarthy, go down to the minors. If you get better, sure, we'll put you in. It was that part of that process that we got wrong the most.
And I would say this for you, Mario. When I'm looking at the projections, because one of the things I do is I mentioned earlier, I look across multiple sets, and the projection, I'm looking back at when I wrote my bold prediction for McCarthy, saying he wasn't going to be a top 40 outfielder. At the time, his ADP was 109 with a min of 77 and a max of 134. You had projected 561 plate appearances, and the Bat X and Steamer were right there with you. Everything else, like you mentioned, the projections were very well aligned. You weren't out there on anything. Everything else, there's another number that was extremely close to you. So it's like, it wasn't like, you shouldn't take that big of an L, because everybody kind of took the L on this. Projection systems took the L on this right now. But he's still, like I said, these things are fixable. I think really what it comes down to is when you have somebody that fast, often that slugging, some of the minor league slugging percentage, people fall in love with that power, and sometimes that's just leg power. You're getting those doubles and triples that are otherwise singles and doubles for some other hitters, and they're turning that into that. And especially, again, those run environments he played in the Arizona farm system really helped.
And then there's confirmation bias. So, preseason, you look at roster resource, and they got him batting third. Wow, then he must be good if he's batting third in this lineup, right? You see a couple things online that just confirm, well, checks out every way. Sure, he's inexperienced, but hey, everybody says he's going to be great, right? So, right. You have that kind of thing, and it's easy to get. I feel like he's like the old Rockies who were big, fast guys, and you think, well, got to get him for Roto. We're talking about Garrett Hampson, who is constantly a bust. Ezekiel Tovar looks like a bust this year. How about Raimel Tapia? Like, I just think of the Rockies, and there's guys who are threats to steal. Oh boy, got to get him in Roto. They just turn out to be bust, and maybe we should have known that this was that kind of profile and to stay away from that. Maybe that's it. So now the question, of course, is how do you handle him in fantasy? Now, Jason, I'm assuming that as long as you're not in a mono league, it's a drop right now. Do you agree?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. We're all dealing with so many different injuries on our roster. It's really tough to carry somebody that we may not. He may not be back for a few weeks. I know some other guys were looking at. Oh, maybe it's just a 20-day thing, so he'll still get the credit for the service time and whatnot. But he may not be back for a while. And I know in some of my teams, I've had to cut some guys that I really like just because they're hurt, and I can't afford. I can't afford to carry multiple hurt guys. So for me, McCarthy's he's a drop, and then you may have to buy him twice. You may have to pay for him again. If you spent good draft capital, you may have to spend good fab capital now.
Yeah, again, it's sunk cost, so it is what it is. Ruvain, let's go to you first on. Let's talk about Jordan Walker, and I can't believe how much money people spent on him right away. I mean, sure, he's electric. He had a lot of homers in a short amount of time in spring training. We all saw in the Arizona Fall League last year, his incredible ability. But, the place where he was going right before the season started, even without him being secured was on the roster was, to me, just insane. And look where he is. He's back right now, and really it's because you got to play Nolan Gorman, and he basically he's the DH, and since Walker's not going to be DHing, he's got to play every day, and that's going to be in AAA until there's an injury. So, Ruvain, again, was the process right for us to ignore Jordan Walker, or to say we're not paying that amount of fantasy capital? And what is your rest of season outlook for Jordan Walker?
Well, I think the process was wrong because we believed in the spring training stats. One thing you should know is never believe in spring training stats. They don't mean anything. They don't count for anything. And people fall in love with spring training darlings, and they get screwed over because they end up paying too much. If you enter slow draft and during spring training, you see someone has a good game, they get drafted the next day. Someone has a good game, they have a bad game, they get pushed back. The process for the fact that he got pushed up so quickly and so fast because of the spring training. I think that was the problem. I mean, he's not even 21. He's finally playing his first games now at AAA. He skipped AAA, went straight from AA to AAA. His K rate was up this year. His walk rate was down, but he just needs more seasoning. He's just not ready. The Cardinals almost felt quote unquote obligated to play him just because of the spring he had. He won a spot on the roster, but he didn't do enough during the course of the season so far to keep that spot because the Cardinals are so deep. And then you look at the AAA right now. Who would be called up first? Is Jordan Walker going to be called up first, or is Juan Yepez going to be called up first? I think if the Cardinals, a couple months down the road, they need someone, they're going to call up Juan Yepez. They're not going to call up Jordan Walker only because Yepez has been there already. They know what they're going to get from him. Jordan Walker is, well, to me, he was a wild card, which is why I didn't want to pay the price for him. I thought he was going at a ridiculous price early on, and I didn't see the need to have to spend such a high so much draft capital on such an unknown.
Yeah, I don't think you spent that much on Walker, right, Jason?
I didn't have him anywhere.
Yeah.
I couldn't. I mean, he was in the drafts that now again, I don't do NL only. I didn't make my way into an NL only league this year, but he went over $20 in both the ones that I sat in. I want to say he went 20 in labor and tout because I was in both of those rooms. With that, but no, I don't have any. And Ruven made a good point about spring training. Let's not forget, Walker was, you couldn't get him out in spring training. He was hitting home runs all over the place. He looked fantastic. I mean, to me, it's, we've had some phenomenal rookies come up lately, phenomenal rookies that have done really well and kind of blown the curve for everybody else. And so even when Walker got sent down, it wasn't like he was doing that badly. But it's just there are other guys on the roster that are doing better, and they want at that age. He needs consistent everyday playing time. If they can't give it to him. It was the right move to send him down to Memphis. This was a risk all along with him, but people were so bought into. He made the opening day roster. Let's go. And let's not forget, this was last year. This was Josh Lowe. Josh Lowe made the opening day roster. Had gaudy minor league numbers. Everybody else was, let's go. We're in on Josh Lowe, and he was back in Durham within a few weeks. And it took him a while to come back. I don't believe Jordan Walker is going to be down in Memphis for a while. I'm hoping he's down at least long enough that Memphis makes a trip here to Charlotte so I can see him play in person again. But that's about as selfish as I want to get. I haven't checked the schedule to see. I know Memphis was just here about 2 weeks ago, and Matthew Liberatore was here pitching. But I don't know if they're going to come back anytime soon. That may have been their one visit, which stinks. So I'll have to hold out for Louisville coming here so I can see Andrew Abbott pitch here in Charlotte.
Yeah, I think the thing here is the principle is return on investment because, McCarthy, that required a big investment. And yes, the projection said buy him anyways, but the dollar amount you had to pay was great. And the same thing with Walker. The dollar amount was great. You take a guy like Anthony Volpe, he's hitting homers, a couple of bases. His average is not great, but, he's not going to lose you much profit because the cost wasn't that big. And even when he was called up, we're talking about like a $5 play, not like a $15 play.
Mm-hmm.
So return on investment really is there. If it's a rookie, there's just a threshold of investment you can really spend. And sure, I understand that there's the Bobby Witts that it all works out, but for every one of those, it doesn't work out for a bunch.
And you're talking about, and you brought up Anthony Volpe. There's less of a risk of him losing playing time because the Yankees don't have a real true shortstop on that roster, while the Cardinals have a bunch of different outfielders. They're known for all their great outfielders, and there was always that inherent risk that Jordan Walker would lose playing time just because there are other more seasoned outfielders there.
That's absolutely right.
That's a great point. That matters a lot. So now on to hot players as the hot players show. We talked last week about how do you know when a cold player is legit or not? Well, Jason, can you tell by looking at some stats or other things, or what other things can you look at to see a hot player who's really performing well unexpectedly and to say, no, that guy is for real, or, all right, that guy's for real with a little bit of regression, or, nah, that guy is just totally lucky and he's going to come back to earth?
I mean, we have to look at a few things. It doesn't take that long for exit velocity to stabilize. So if a guy's starting to hit the ball really hard that we haven't seen that before, that should get your attention. If you see a dramatic change in some statistic, I was looking at a couple of things yesterday. You guys, Mets fans, you know this weirdness with Francisco Lindor right now, how he's pulling everything out of nowhere. He's never been this type of hitter, but he's pulling everything and he's hitting a lot of stuff in the air. We've never seen this kind of thing from him before, and it's just weird. But we have a lot of this stuff. But you have to look for exit velocity changes. I look for the setup changes. Does a guy's swing look different? Has he eliminated something? And I'm not saying that this is going to be permanent success moving forward, but if you have written off a guy in the past and he's doing something different, then look at that to see what has you back in. Like, Jared Kelenic, Brandon Marsh, good examples of guys that weren't that. Jared Kelenic was terrible last year. Brandon Marsh has had his moments. Both of these guys, when play started today, they two of the top four by a few offensive measures. So it's been amazing to see what they've done, and we know they've made some changes. So it's really those types of things. And then has their playing time situation changed? Have they vaulted up? I mean, Jack Sawinski's had a bunch of noise lately after the big week that he had last week, a lot of it in Colorado. Jack Sawinski really wasn't on a lot of draft radars, but now he's playing every single day, and even if it's a lefty out there, they just lower him a little bit in the lineup rather than bench him. So all of a sudden, his viability in fantasy has gone up because we don't have to worry about him losing all that playing time by not even being in the lineup. They're keeping him out there every day. Maybe you have to make some batting average adjustments to that because he's going to be in some tougher matchups, but he's out there every single day. And Pittsburgh is putting guys in motion. I mean, Zawinski's got 3 steals himself. So I'm always looking for changes, whether it's process, whether it's something we can see in the numbers, whether it's playing time change. These are the types of things that playing time changes come when a team recognizes, hey, you're doing hot. We're gonna reward you for that and move you up in the lineup and do some things like that. So those are just some of the variables that come into the decision process for Jason Collette.
Yeah, I agree with everything there. Of course, for relievers, leverage is also a good indicator of they're using him in better situations as the analogy to the lineup. Before I ask Ruvain to add to this list, it saddens me as a Met fan to talk about Kelenic when Edwin Diaz, the guy who was traded for, is not playing this year. So this year, Seattle, you win the trade for 2023.
Yeah, sorry to scratch that wound, guys.
Thanks, Jason. Ruvain, all right, anything to add to what to look for?
Yes, look to see what they're swinging at. See if they're swinging at pitches in the zone, if they're bad ball swinging. If they're hot right now, they're probably swinging at pitches that are more in the zone than not. Is it lucky? How's their BABIP? Is their BABIP high? Is their BABIP close to 400? That's not sustainable. Are they walking more? Are they also, besides getting the hits, are they getting on base, walking? That's very important. Also, all these things to show that the hot player can continue this throughout the course of the season.
Jason, do you think it's easier to detect realness in the hot to playing for a hitter than it is for the pitcher? I kind of think that a lot of times, you can have a pitcher have 2 good outings in a row and then, blow up time.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes it will be easier for that. I mean, for pitchers, I know I'm as guilty as anybody else. I will watch one outing and be like, "Oh yeah, I am all in on this. This was amazing." Yeah, I didn't end up getting him in draft season, but I remember watching a particular outing in spring from Michael Kopech and thinking, "Okay, look, he's turned the corner. This looks great. He's commanding this." And it was like a 3 inning, and he was just blowing everybody away. And he has sucked. He's got a 7.01 ERA, has not looked well. There's nothing going right for him right now, much like the rest of the White Sox roster. But it hasn't been good. So sometimes you do fall into that trap. But we only get to see these, especially starting pitchers, once a week, sometimes twice a week. And you see him in a 1-start week, and all of a sudden it's Fab weekend. He's going to be a 2-start guy. You're going to take that chance and be more aggressive. Where if it's a hitter that is let you down before, you're not like, do I really want to get back in? It's like, if you may have missed all the magic with the guy at this point. Like if Jake Berger hit another home run tonight, how long is this story going to last before something regresses with him or the injury bug hits him like it has every single year? Sometimes you've missed that magic. But if you can, that's why exit velocity is a nice thing because it removes all those biases. You can go look at it and say, oh, wow, here over the last week, this dude's starting to sting the ball. It hasn't showed up in the numbers yet. I'll give him a chance this week and let's see what happens.
I actually disagree. I actually think that I take more of a chance on the hitter than the pitcher because the downside on the pitcher is huge with the blow up. If you pick up a guy and, he's gone back to his old self, all right, so you get a couple of zeros, you get a couple of counting stats zeros, sure. But when you have a pitcher who, he's back to his bad self, well, that's 7 earned runs in 2 innings.
That's like Dylan Cease tonight wore it. And I got a question for you two. Not that it's on the rundown or anything, but it's something I've noticed. Do you guys have any explanation why the first inning ERA league wide is an absolute disaster this year? It's higher than any other inning in the splits. It's like I think it was 524 entering play today. There's been a lot of first inning blowups, and I can't explain it. I don't know why this is happening, but every time I look at the game, there's a 5 spot being hung up on a starter. I'm not talking an opener. I'm talking an actual starting pitcher giving up 4 or 5 runs in the first inning.
I mean, Ruben can make guesses as well, and for me, it's just guesses. There's just so many things that have been changing in the league. Who knows about the ball? Maybe the ball's different. Mm-hmm. Is the pitch clock creating stress among pitchers that they just can't cope with the timing mechanism, and it's taking them a couple of innings to get into it? I don't know. We mentioned earlier on an earlier show this year that you're getting more ace pitchers having these clunkers, and they're going to have good outings, but there's just more risk of having a clunker because week to week you may not get into the groove of the of pitching. If you have to hurry because of the pitch clock, if you're a little fatigued, it exacerbates the issue. Mm-hmm. And maybe you're off more. And if you're off the first, you're just off and off and off. On days where you're totally fine, the pitch clock getting used to doesn't matter. But on days where you're off, it just highlights the issues more. And that's my theory. But again, who knows? Could be the ball, could be the bases, could be the throwing, could be the worried about something else. Maybe this is a different year because they actually had a spring training versus the last couple of years where they didn't. You have the World Baseball Classic. There's so many things that could be. Any guesses, Ruben?
Usually in the first inning when the pitcher is starting pitching, he's figuring out which pitches work for him that day. So if he doesn't have the time to actually stop and think and take his time to see, oh wait, this pitch is not working for me, let me change to something else, and he has to quickly pitch and pitch and pitch and pitch, you're going to end up with some meatballs over the plate. You're going to get some more walks in the first inning. And I think that's the whole thing. They always said about a good pitcher, if you don't get them in the first inning, you're never going to get to them. Well, this is what's happening. The first inning is when the pitcher gets a feel for the ball for that day, wherever they are, whatever temperature it is outside, whatever the weather, whatever the atmosphere, whatever it is, they get a feel for in the first inning. And if they have to pitch and pitch and pitch and pitch, and they're not getting a chance to think and have all the data of which pitch is working, which is not working, which I want to throw, where do I want to throw it, that's when they start leaving the pitchers out over the plate because they're going to go back to their bread and butter. And when the hitters know what to expect, meaning they know what the pitcher's best pitch is, and they're looking for the secondary stuff, and then the pitcher starts throwing the secondary stuff, that's when they start to get hit.
That's a great point. It's probably mental as well as physical, So great points. So Jason, let's talk about trading. How do you know when to trade away a hot player that you think is going down? And how do you know when to trade for a hot player? Maybe there's somebody you think is for real that maybe the owner doesn't, but you do. How can you tell the scenarios of when to trade from and away?
First of all, never trade for a hot player. You're going to overpay for him, and that's the other piece of it. It's really tough to trade away a hot player too, because you have to be willing to separate. You have to be realistic about how you evaluate that player. So let's say you purchased a player in the draft, in the auction rather, for like $15, and he's currently performing at a $25 rate. You can't trade him like he's a $25 player, because that's not, if we can't guarantee, there's no guarantee he's going to be that the rest of the season. Maybe he's a 20 guy. So maybe you do value him a little bit differently than you did draft day, but you can't value him at the rate where he's on the heater. You just can't. And that's where I see a lot of trades, because I know a lot of folks, there's so much focus on NFBC and non-trade leagues, but for those who listen and play, I play in multiple home leagues where we do have trading. And this is where it always gets the challenge. As soon as somebody's hot, somebody's like, oh, I never saw this guy coming, I'm going to put him out in the block. And now, he probably is worth a third starting pitcher, but I'm going to ask for a 2 now because this is the new reality. And then nothing ever happens. And then you have that player on that cold streak. And so you had the hot, but you got greedy, and then you had to absorb the cold streak. The goal is to get rid of that player before he's going to get cold. I mean, I see a name on the rundown. I don't want to jump that far ahead, but there's a particular pitcher on the list of guys you want to talk about. I absolutely, if I had him, I would be trying to trade him in a heartbeat this week. And I would take like 90%, 85, 90% of perceived value to get them off my roster.
And by the way, there is one home league where actually you, me, and Ruvain are all playing in GDD, if I recall.
That's right.
And Ruvain is a point out of first place, by the way. So
yeah, kudos. I think that's one of the leagues where I'm. Is that one of the ones I'm dealing with? My leagues this year, if I'm healthy, I'm doing extremely well.
Yeah,
if I'm not
here,
healthy, I'm doing awful. That's pretty much down. Like I am first place in AL Labor, and I'm in second or third in AL Talent. I'm in first or second in XFL. I'm doing really well in those leagues. I'm in like third or fourth, depending on the day, in TGFBI and my RotoWire OC. But there are other teams where I've just been killed by injuries, and I'm just scraping the bottom, and it's killing me.
Yeah, same here. And there was one league where I had at the start of the season $120 of the $260 on the IL to start the season, and I'm in third place in Labor. So
good for you. Cool. I've got I'm one of my DCs, one of my 50 team drafting holds. I have 14 guys that are out right now. 14. I'm down to one healthy. I have 10 pitchers to choose from every week. It's awful.
In that league we're talking about, where I'm in second place, I have Justin Verlander and Luis Severino as my 1-2 pitchers. So I think when we're talking about the trades, I think you have to look at your roster and see what you're trying to do. I'm waiting for these injured guys to come back. Am I going to trade for a hot guy and lose a commodity that I have? No, I think I can wait it out a little bit because I know how long hopefully these players will be coming back. I think my team is holding water. It's in second place. So it's doing pretty well right now. So I think for trading for a hot player, it depends on where your team is. Do you need it? If you're close to the bottom and you see you have a bunch of injuries and the only thing that'll shake up your roster is to maybe get that hot guy that'll jumpstart your team, you could do that. I think that's really the only way because, listen, this is like the stock market. You're supposed to buy low and sell high. If you do the opposite, you're not going to make money. You're not going to win. And I think that's basically how it goes.
That's right.
So, Jason, you said that it's hard to trade, or you don't want to trade for a hot player, right? And it's hard to trade your hot player. Do you think it's easier to trade away a cold player or to trade for a cold player? Is that like that kind of trade easier, you think?
I find it to be easier to trade away a cold player because the other folks aren't coming in too greedy. They may even be willing to give up somebody because they recognize, okay, this guy's cold. So let's use Francisco Lindor as an example because we were talking about him earlier. They recognize you're probably frustrated with something and like you want to move him, and the other owner's like, I need to get him. And so you may end up getting more value than you thought you could because that other guy knows that a heater's on the way and they want to get on the front end of that heater rather than try to catch it up at the top. So if I'm a team, let's say I'm a team that you got lost Corey Seager, and I'm looking for, I need another shortstop type of thing, and I've been trying to stream some warm bodies in that roster spot and it's not working. Yeah, I'd be reaching out to the Francisco Lindor owner to try to get something. I may even be willing to overpay at this point. So it depends on those kind of market conditions.
Yeah, I think that name value means a lot. And to be honest, in trading, desperation means a lot. If you go to a team that's really low on hitting and they need a hitter, they might be desperate enough to trade a pitcher who, is a cold pitcher who you think is a lot better to get that hitter, even though it's a lousy trade or, you think it's a lousy trade, but the desperation aspect of it really helps.
Well, Jason, let me explain something here. We have me and Ariel in our home league, and we made a trade already for a cold player. We traded for Manny Machado. We are in first place in that league. We traded away Jacob deGrom. Do you think that's a fair trade, a cold Manny Machado for a Jacob deGrom for a team that's in first place?
I do, because if you are of the theory that Jacob deGrom will eventually return home to the IL, then yes, get in front of that.
Just take the risk,
exactly.
Machado's lower risk. Just let him absorb the risk, and now we're getting a similarly valued player with less risk. Sure,
and that's exactly my mindset. In all seriousness, it's like you have more risk moving forward. DeGrom, if like everybody always likes to say, if you could remove the injury risk and just put his health factor at 99, he could arguably be the best pitcher in baseball. But in fantasy baseball, he'd be a 1-1 pick. But you can never count on that.
Yeah. All right, so let's do a couple of examples to talk about the player, whether we think it's legit or not. Go through a little quicker than some of the other stuff, but let's start with Tampa Bay Rays, Yandy Diaz, and we took the L on McCarthy. ATC projections, largest value, according to Dollar, and we did this in one of our off-season shows, it was Yandy Diaz. There was nobody that ATC projections showed would be as good a bargain as Yandy. Now, obviously, ATC and nobody else projected this, hitting all those homers, but the value, the guy, that was the guy I have on a lot of rosters because the projections showed it. The process was good. Hitting-wise, he's hitting just like he usually does. We're talking 15% walk rate, 13% strikeout rate. I mean, those are what he usually does, which are phenomenal. And walks and strikeout rates, they stabilize quickly, so we know this is him. Everything looks legit. He's batting leadoff for a good team. The only thing that looks a little bit that will regress is the homers. Sure, he's not going to hit this many homers. He's not going to be in the pace for 35 homers. We know he's not that kind of guy. But last year, I think it was a little bit fluky low. His homer to fly ball rate last year was just 7%, so that should go up. So ATC projections projecting 14 homers rest of the season. So basically, I think he's maybe a 15-homer guy, maybe even a little bit more. I think he's that as opposed to just a low teens homer guy. But we're talking about a guy who last year returned $13 of value, and with the hot start, I think it's fair to say he's going to return just as much, maybe more. Definitely a good buy for the price here, and if you have him, you're holding him. If you can somehow get him at a nice price, assuming a little bit of a decline in homers, I think he's absolutely legitimate. Jason?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on as a guest and letting me talk about Yandy Diaz. This I love. Yandy Diaz has been one of my favorite guys to have in fantasy baseball because he qualifies at both positions. He plays that, and he's just been. I was thrilled when the club signed him to the extension this year, and he's going to hit leadoff. He's like the atypical leadoff guy because he's so big and he does not have speed. He just doesn't do that. But he hits this absolute snot out of the baseball. And that we've known this, but usually it's into the ground, and that's been the big change this year, is that he is finally getting the loft to the ball that we've all wanted to get out of him. You look at his spray, and he hit another home run tonight, and the only reason I bring up that home run is because it's the first one he's hit to the opposite field this year. Everything else has been pull jobs, and that's where Yandy Diaz is different this year. He is looking to lift and launch to the pull side, and that has not been, line drives all over the field is what he would just hit it where the pitcher threw him the ball. If they want to throw him a breaking ball away, okay, I'll slap it the other way. You really could not. The funny thing was teams would shift. We know it's bad to shift right-handed hitters, and they would put three guys on the left side of the bag when it was legal to do the shift. And Yandy would just continually just hit it through the hole because that's kind of back control that he has. But right now, he's actually opened his swing up a little bit, and he's striking out a bit more than he had. But he's already he's over halfway to his career high in home runs. His career high was 13. He's got 7 now, and it's a different guy. This gets back to what I was talking about earlier. You can see a process change in his approach. He's now no longer just hitting what the pitchers give him. He's out there hunting, and if he gets what he wants, he will hit it. But he's got some of the best plate discipline in the league. You rarely see him chase stuff. He is very good at pitch recognition, can still work counts, and will gladly accept the walk if he doesn't get the pitch that he wants. So if he's a really good guy, like if you want to sit back and watch a guy on another team that's not on your favorite team and watch his approach to hitting, Yandy Diaz is somebody that I strongly recommend because it's a very disciplined plate appearance. In fact, he's up right now as I'm talking here in the 9th inning trying to tack on. So it's fun. I love him. I think his production is sustainable as long as his lower half stays healthy. He's always had an issue with a quad injury, hamstring. It takes a lot to slow down the big tank when he's in motion on the bases, and that's where things run into issue. He's got to have those legs, and when he doesn't, that's when you see the swing fall apart. I've often, hitting coaches, not that I am one, but they often talk about the holy trinity of the hands, the core, and the legs, and you have to have those. And with Yandy, if any one of those gets out, the swing just absolutely falls apart, and it's back to soft contact garbage. That was how Tampa Bay got him in the first place, way back when from Cleveland. So, yes, him, I think it's sustainable because he's still going to hit high in the lineup, and there's been a definite process change to his swing this year.
Pretty cool to talk about your Ray for a little while on how good he is, and I totally agree, Jason. The plan this year for drafting at third base to me was simple. I didn't spend any money on getting a top third baseman because there was two pockets. There was the Alec Boehm, Ryan McMahon pocket, pretty low down, and I'm totally comfortable getting those at huge discounts. And if I didn't get any one of those, the answer is Yandy Diaz for $1. I mean, that's just a no-brainer. And even if I got the Boehm or whatever, I picked the Yandy Diaz anyways. So that was just absolutely a win here.
Yeah, Yandy Diaz has been my guy. I've been on him for years. You know that already. I think the only two things that kept him out of the lineup was injury, just like Jason mentioned. He missed 3 months in 2019 due to injury. And Jimon Choi, they kept taking him out to have Jimon play because they wanted the lefty-righty split. His launch angle has changed. He's barreling up the ball 10% more than normal, and he is a physical specimen. Have you ever seen him? He is like you said, he's a tank. He's like an Uber tank. He is built, and he just he was able to unlock that power. It's to take it to another level. He can hit the 30 home runs this year.
Right back to you, Ruvain. Nico Horner looks fantastic this year. Why don't you give your thoughts on whether you think his great play is sustainable?
I do think his great play is sustainable. I think the main we're getting out of him now is stolen bases. He's got 10 already so far for the season. His K rate, 6.4. That's already for a full month, so we know what he's doing. He's batting leadoff. The Cubs, they're stealing bases. They're stealing a ton of bases. They're one of the teams in the top 5 of stolen bases in all of baseball. So they're running. They're pushing the envelope. There's no reason why he can't continue to do this. He's not known as a true power hitter, but if he hits you 10, 15 home runs and steals you 25, 30 bases as a leadoff hitter scoring runs, I think there's no reason why he can't sustain what he's doing.
Do you agree, Jason?
I agree with Ruvain. I love Horner for the versatility. I love the speed. I mean, as you said, the Cubs are running a bunch. Horner's 10 of 12 for stolen bases this year, and that's in 64 opportunities. And for those who don't know, stolen base opportunity is you're on base and the next base in front of you is unoccupied. So if you're on first, second's open. If you're on second, third's open. He's had 64 opportunities. He's attempted 12 steals, and that's twice. That's 2 times above the league average. So he is out there moving, and that's what you want. And as we said with Yandy, Horner was dirt cheap because we knew what his limitations were coming into the season. Like, okay, he can't do this, he can't do this. But we knew he could run. I mean, he stole 20 bases last year. We knew he could run, and it was going to be last year. It was mostly down in the lineup, and now it's a different story. And he's setting the table, getting on base a ton, which is nothing new because he did it in 2021 in limited time as well. And so he's just getting a chance to showcase his skills again. And people that invested late round picks in him are getting handsomely rewarded here.
Yeah, I remember we had a conversation with Sarah Sanchez on Nico Horner, and she was like, I don't get why nobody saw this guy coming. And when you look into it, the reasons why projections and nobody was really on him was because he had a lost season in the minors because of COVID. He was hurt in the minors, so he missed some good productive seasons where he would have put up better numbers. And then when he did play in the minors, because of the injuries, he wasn't performing well. Mm-hmm. So the MLEs got screwed up. So until you get to the major leagues and you see him actually doing it, there's no projection of him doing that. So it was one of these guys that just got lost in the shuffle because projections had no way of saying, wait a minute, actually this guy is much better. There was no data to show that he was. But he's a legitimate 285-plus hitter. 10 homers, 25 stolen base player. That is uber useful, and he's probably more than 25 stolen base player. I mean, he only has 10 right now. He could end up with 30, maybe even more if the Cubs still run. Obviously, he's hitting 340 now. That's not going to happen, but 285 rest of the way, totally. And the projections really show that now. It took a couple years, but he's there. I mean, if you like Stephen Kwan, I like Nico Horner so much better than Stephen Kwan. So this is absolutely legit. Let's do a couple more. How about sticking with the Cubs? Patrick Wisdom, certainly having power, but is this one of these he's hot and regress types, Jason?
Here's the thing with Patrick Wisdom. Embrace him for what he is and don't hate him for what he isn't. He's never going to make good contact. Who cares? Who cares? He hits this. I said earlier about Yandy. He hits the snot out of the baseball. That's what Patrick Wisdom do. And you have to take the good with the bad. He's kind of the player that you would take if if your team is hurting for power. You can't, and a slump's coming with wisdom because the profile says, this profile's full of risk. So what? It's like the last couple of years, he struck out a ton, but he's hit 25 plus home runs in each of the last 2 seasons. And he's already got 9 this year, in a lot less playing time. But the good news is he's actually lowered his strikeout rate a little bit. So it's the 3rd consecutive year that he's lowered his strikeout rate. And this level of production is unsustainable. Then you look at the rest of the season projections. You have him it's 17 home runs the rest of the way, so that gets him to 26 home runs, one higher than last year. But it's one of these guys where you can't trade him. Getting back to the hot cold thing, nobody's going to take this in a trade because they're going to be like, oh no, the slump's coming, everything. So you just ride it out and you embrace him for what he is, and just don't worry about and try to insulate yourself for what he could do to your roster if he hits a massive slump.
Yeah, I picked him up for like $30 in Tout Wars, $30 out of 1,000. Sure, I'll ride the hot streak, and I'm good with cutting him in a couple of weeks when he cools down. Totally fine. I think we know who he is. He is what he is. By the way, do you see Joey Gallo? Speaking of pure power hitters, Joey Gallo is batting, I kid you not, 262. I didn't know that you could have a number with a 2 in it for his batting average, but alas, he's batting 262 with 7 homers. He's totally back. Is it the ball this year? Are these guys, or is he just healthy? What do you think it's a combination of?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, the ball, it's not. We haven't seen anything that says, "Hey, the ball has changed." If you follow me on Twitter, I do like a daily update looking at, "Hey, this is where the offense environment was over this March, April compared to this time last year and this time 2 years ago." And the offensive environment is definitely up from this time last year. Like home runs to contact is up 22% over this time last year, but it's down 6% from 2 years ago at this time. And so it's like a little recency bias comes into play there where people are like, oh, hey, this is, it's different. Well, yeah, it's different last year because last year we saw so many 1-0, 2-1, 2-0 games in March and April, and we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing the exact opposite. But 2021, we're actually seeing a bit less offense. The only thing that has been sticky and as far as change is the steals. Stolen bases are up 44% from this time 2 years ago, and they're up 27% from this time last year. So that is here to stay. I don't see that going away too much. The league is converting stolen bases at an 80% success rate. As long as they're converting them like this, they're going to keep running. The league was 27 of 29 2 nights ago this week in stealing bases. That's crazy. I mean, we could go a week and not see 27 stolen bases a few years ago, and we're seeing 29 attempts in a single night.
Yeah, stolen base is absolutely legit. Power, I guess, remains to be seen. It's early, though, but I do think it's back a little. Hey, or maybe it's because of the pitch clock and the pitchers are giving up more meatballs. It's too hard. It's hard to tell,
Uh-huh.
Ruvain, let's get to the elephant in the room, which is Jared Kelenic, who finally looks like he can be somewhat productive. As we alluded to, we don't like talking about this guy, but we sort of have to here. Do you think that what he's doing will stick, or will he translate back down to the 141 hitter? He actually now has a career 189 batting average. We know he has a power speed blend, but do you think this is legit, and is he the prospect that everyone thought he would be?
I think he is legit. I think the same reason why we were all scratching our heads why he was doing so poorly now, we're scratching our heads what happened, what turned it around. Well, he did have a new hitting coach over the offseason. Actually, his new hitting coach was his old hitting coach. He had Tim Laker, and he just went back to the basics. So what is he doing now? His home run to fly ball rate is a little bit crazy. It's not sustainable, but he's always done that. But he's pulling the ball much more. He's less shift conscious. His launch angle, his cut in half. He's hitting more line drives, so he's barreling the ball up more. doing all this stuff, he's not trying to hit home runs. He's trying to hit line drives, and those line drives, because of the launch angle, are going out, and he's hitting for average because he's a lefty and there's no shift now. So he's one. I think he may be one of the main benefactors from having no shift there, and the fact that now he's got his confidence back. Confidence for a baseball player can do wonders. And the fact that he started off the year like this, not that he started off slow and then built up on it, he started off like this, I think he's just going to take off. And I think if you can trade for him, do it. I think he's going to be a long-term guy, especially for this year. This year, I think he can continue it. I don't see why not. So I think he's turned it around, and I think he is possibly the second, I think maybe the best player on the Mariners right now. Julio Rodriguez is playing well, but I think Collette right now, because of him, he's doing so much more right now that I can't stop gushing over him. He's very good. I want him on all my teams. I'm sorry I didn't draft him. I'm sorry I didn't buy low on him when we could have during draft season, and I think he's going to sustain it the rest of the year.
Yeah, his O-swing rate is down this year. His Z contact rate is way up, so he's choosing better pitches, and he's hitting more pitches in the zone. He is going to still strike out some, so you're not going to see that lofty 325 average sustain. I don't think he's a sub-200 hitter. I don't think he's above a 250 hitter, though, but I think you'll see the power-speed blend, and you'll get a lot out of him. I didn't buy him this year in drafts because I thought the price was still too high. Not that it was enormous this year like it was in the past, but still out of my comfort zone for a guy who's just been so bad. I'd rather take my money in that price range and spend it on the Ryan McMahon and Bohm and those quantities I needed, rather than give another shot to this guy who's failed us 3 times before. Do you disagree with anything said?
No, I don't disagree. So with Kelenic, and this is where I got to give my my podcast partner Justin Mason credit. This was his guy this year. All winter we recorded. He's like, I want Kelenic. I want Kelenic. I want Kelenic. The talent's still there. I hear he's working with a new coach. He's working on things. And like 1 year, every year Justin's got a guy. Like 2 years ago, obviously he made a big name with Cedric Mullins' breakout season, and this year Kelenic was his guy everywhere. And then Kelenic came out and had a good spring, and that's really what drove up his draft price because in the offseason you wanted to take Kelenic in November, December, January. He was there for the taking. Even in February, he was there for the taking. And the big difference this year is he's not, you could get him out. The easiest way to get him out previously was just throw him anything with a wrinkle, anything that was not a fastball. And there was no way he was going to do anything with it. And that's been the difference this year. He is absolutely murdering fastballs. But the breaking stuff and off-speed stuff, he's hitting 250 against both those pitches, and he's not getting himself out at the rate that he was. And he's actually making decent contact off those pitches. Last year he was striking out over 40% against both those pitch types. This year, you're still striking out. He's still striking out over 40% against off-speed pitches, but who isn't? Everybody's doing that. And if you're murdering fastballs, then that's kind of the tax you pay is you're going to struggle against off speed because if you're out there hunting for him, that's going to happen. And so maybe that's how the league moves forward. I would compare that to like Brandon Lau. He was on a big heater last week, and then this past week, Toronto and Houston gave him a ton of splitters and changeups and soft stuff down, and he got cold. Then he goes in Chicago today, and Dylan Cease's like, oh, he can't hit my fastball. I'm going to announce my presence with authority. And Brandon Lau hit a home run and almost had a cycle tonight against Chicago pitching. So it really comes down to how Kelenic's going to adjust. He made his offseason adjustments so far in 90 plate appearances. He's doing extremely well. Now the advanced scouts are have to give the report, say, okay, guys, this is how Kelenic's changed. This is how we should attack him. And it's a game of chess. You make a move, I make a move. You make a move, I make a move. And that's what I want to see, how Kelenic adjusts to his first sign of adversity, because right now he hasn't had any. He has just been up there mashing.
Yeah. I thought Justin Mason's guy this year was TJ Friedl.
That is his other guy. He had a guy in both leagues, but he has, if you're in a league with Justin, he has Friedl, or you sniped him on Friedl, and he's got Kelenic. He's got one or both those guys in just about all of his leagues, and I know he's doing really well this year.
And the three of us are in a league in GDD with Justin Mason, and I waited the whole time with money and I sniped, and I
Oh,
Jason,
he was
just
mad about that.
yeah, he ran out of money, and I gotcha, and I knew he wanted him. So there you go. Sorry, Justin. All right, let's do some pitchers here. Jason, how about Joe Ryan, who looks like the ace of the league? He's got the new sweeper, strikeout rate 30%, walk rate 3%, ground ball rate, well, it's still just 35%, but it's up from the past. He's still limiting home runs, which he's done all his career. I mean, we know there's going to be some regression, but, man, this guy looks really good. I like what the Twins are doing with their pitching this year. I think we should ride Joe Ryan. What do you think, Jason?
So I think this is your payback for me mentioning Kelnick earlier, the Kelnick for Diaz, because you remember this is the guy that the Rays traded for Nelson Cruz. At the time, I am a long time Nelson Cruz wonk. Love the guy. I've always wanted him on Tampa Bay. Like as far back as 2008, I wanted him on Tampa Bay. It finally happened. This was the tax that had to be paid. I was not happy that this was the guy that they had to give up because I really love watching Joe Ryan pitch. The big thing with him is obviously the invisible, the way his delivery and the ball is really tough to pick up. And as you mentioned, he added the sweeper, which he really did last year, but the big difference this year is he added the splitter. And so now he's got 3 swing and miss pitches that are generating swings and misses of 25% or higher. Each of them are doing that, and so he's got that, and that's really been the gap that was missing because he used to throw a straight changeup, didn't work. It wasn't working for him. The splitter is working for him much better than the changeup was working for him, and now he's got the breaking balls and stuff. He's not having to lean on the fastball as much as he has in the past. There were times in the minors where he was throwing his fastball 72 to 75% of the time because he could get away with it with the ride that he has on his fastball and whatnot. But he looks like a more complete pitcher now because of an effective off-speed pitch. That was the missing piece, and that gets back to what I was talking about earlier about process change. What has changed? This guy's doing something. He's doing really well. Why? Let's look at it. Oh, yeah, that's something. And again, that can't guarantee success all year long. New pitch is not going to do that. But right now, we can at least look at it and say, oh, that's why he's doing better, because the league's hitting $139 off his splitter instead of hitting 277 off the changeup that he was using last year. That's going to be a difference. He's got confidence in that pitch, and he can use it, and he's throwing it to righties and lefties. His regular changeup was something he really only threw to lefties. He didn't use it to righties. And so that's where it's like, if you're a righty, you're a lefty, you have to think which of these 3 pitches is coming out. And oh, by the way, this guy's got a really tough release point to begin with. So it's really tough to make that differentiation out of the hand because you don't see the ball out of his hand really well.
Reuven, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm just going to echo a little bit because that splitter he's throwing it 26% of the time, and he hasn't thrown any curves or changeups at all this year. So he basically changed his entire repertoire. He went from a 4-pitch pitcher to a 3-pitch pitcher, eliminating 2 pitchers and adding another. So I think this is sustainable. He's at the same K rate as he had in 2021, so the strikeouts are up because of the same release point with the splitter and the fastball. I think he's a buy now guy, and if people are willing to sell him, he's a guy to buy. He's young. He's 26. He's on a team that's in first place or going to be in the pennant race. I think it's a good buy at this time.
And I'm gonna, to your point, that's a great point, observation about getting rid of some of the pitches. Like if you guys follow Jeff Zimmerman on Twitter, he's got this wonderful little diagram. Like, hey, do you throw more than 3 pitches? Yes.
Hey,
Is your name
yeah.
you Darvish? No. Then stop doing it, dummy. And like that's a great example with Ryan. He threw 5 different pitch classifications last year, and you could look at some of those, and be like, nah, that's not like is a changeup and a curveball both had sub 20% whiff rates. Get rid of them. They're not doing their job. And emphasize what's going well for you. And the sweeper was, and the slider, which he, and the fastball, he's still able to get swings and misses because his fastball is so unique. So he's using what he does best, and that's what I'd like to see some of these other pitchers. It's like, stop trying to throw the kitchen sink and just emphasize what you're really, really good at and execute those. And then maybe surprise them every now and then with a 4th pitch, but find 3 good ones, 3 of them that you can throw to lefties, and maybe 2 that you throw to same side guys, because there are not a lot of guys who are throwing off-speed pitches to righties, throwing off-speed pitches to right-handed hitters, or lefties doing it to lefties. It just doesn't happen that often. But with a splitter, you can get away with that.
So let's talk about Marcus Stroman. Now, Marcus Stroman, did not like last year going into it. He had a decent year, but I'd liked him this year, and I have him on a couple of teams. Here's somebody who I saw the projections, and I really thought that they just got the whip wrong. I mean, Stroman hadn't thrown below a 115 whip since 2019, and yet projections are 129, 132. I just thought that was wrong. And Stroman lasts long into games. This day and age, when you last long into games, you have more of a chance of wins, and the Cubs have enough firepower to give him some wins. So I thought Stroman would be interesting. And he does have the occasional blow up, but the volume that he produces masks it, and he never ends up with a very high ERA. I think he had a 5.5 ERA in 2018, but from 2017 to now, ERA, his worst year was last year, which was a 3.5. So this is a good guy for ratios. And by the way, his strikeouts are actually up this year a lot. 26% strikeout rate. He's never had anything close to that. The most was 22%. I like Stroman, and I think the hot start is legit. Sure, a little bit of regression, but I think it's a guy you can count on. Any disagreement on that, Ruve?
Yes, I'm not a big Stroman guy. Last year, in May, his ERA was 1.5, and in July, it was 0.89. He pitches well certain months. He pitched well in April last year. He ended last year, even with those minuscule ERAs, he ended up last year with a 3.5 ERA. So you mentioned blow-ups. There is going to be a regression to the mean. I think he's going to, pitching at Wrigley Field over the course of the summer, he is going to have those more than just one occasional blow-up. I think there's going to be a regression, and if you have him on the team, I think this is the time to sell high on him and try to get as much as you can. And yes, his strikeout rates are up. That's great, but he's not typically a strikeout pitcher. He's known to be a ground ball pitcher. So the fact that he's getting more strikeouts, he's throwing more pitches. I'm a little bit concerned about that. If he was on my roster, I'd probably trade him at this point.
Yay or nay on Stroman?
Yeah, he's not the guy that I was talking about getting rid of right away, but I could see myself doing the same. It's we look at his repertoire. He throws 6 different pitches. I mean, getting off of what we were just talking about with Joe Ryan, but it's like that's what Stroman has to do because he doesn't have the velocity to blow guys away when he needs to. So he's got to rely on that kind of like wide open repertoire and try to get the soft contact. And, I can't explain where the strikeouts are coming from right now because he's not throwing any new pitch and he's not throwing any pitch any more frequently than he did last year. I mean, nothing
down
dramatically.
A tick, actually. He's down
I'm sorry?
on Velo. And he's also down a tick on Velo.
Yeah.
Also.
So it's just like that's where it's like, oh, he's throwing a little less and nothing new. And so it's like, where's this coming from? And when I have to ask that question, where's this coming from? So as quickly as it showed up, it can go away. And it's like, to me, it's like, this has got to go. I don't know where this is coming from, but I don't know how it lasts if he can continue to get this type of batted ball fortune with it, because I mean he doesn't have the stuff for the league to be hitting 186 off his sinker and 148 off his slurve and 214 off his cutter. I mean, these are numbers that shouldn't go with this stuff given his history. He's been much more hittable than this, and I have not watched him pitch a game this year, so I can't tell you if there's anything different to his release point, his delivery, any of that. But I'm looking at this profile on Savant, and I cannot figure it out. I'm like, where is this coming from? Because I can't put the pieces together.
Yeah, so I said I like him, but I still think he's much lower level than Joe Ryan or anything. This is more of a matchup play, or if you're in a deep league, then you're starting him every week. But I'm okay with riding with him. I think there's less volatility week to week with him. I think that the volume will make up some of his flaws, and I think the whip will be decent. So even if he doesn't strike out people, I think he'll limit the walks going forward. Something's got to give it at least. Let's talk about 2 Blue Jays. Yusei Kikuchi, Jose Barrios. Now, very, very different stories of why we're bringing him up. Jose Barrios is somebody who did not have success last year, not in Toronto, looked terrible his first 2 outings, and then suddenly his last 3 outings, 19 innings pitched, 18 strikeouts, only 2 walks, 3 earned runs. That's like a 1.42 ERA, and that included pitching against Tampa Bay and Houston, so it wasn't like he's pitching against these crappy teams here. And the question is what to do with him. Is he going to be back to his old self, or is this just a couple of lucky outings? And then there's Yusei Kikuchi, who looks like a different pitcher this year. And every week I tell Ruvain, you want to pick up this guy? This guy is looking good. I see the strikeout rate of 26.4, only a 5% walk rate. His K-BB is 22nd amongst qualified pitchers. He's got a 3 ERA and a 1.11 WHIP. I can't say no to him. At least I got to roster him. I didn't start him against Houston, and obviously I should have because he had a great outing. But I think for matchup play, and he's 2-start this week. I mean, you're talking about a guy on the waiver wire. That's him. What do you think, Jason, of these two guys? Are these some people that you're interested, or is he one of the guys that you're getting rid of quickly?
One of them's a guy I'm getting rid of quickly, and it's Kikuchi, but I want to talk about Berrios first. So I did watch him in the game against Tampa Bay, and that came off the game where he got lit up by the Angels, and he did look better in the Tampa Bay game. Was actually controlling. That's one of the things that he's done well here over his, in fact, over all the starts really, is he hasn't hurt himself with walks, and that's been the big difference. Last year he would get himself into trouble with walks, but he's got a good defense with him, and he's trusting it, and so he's not really falling into trouble with the walks, and the strikeouts are coming for him, and that's really where. But it's not the velocity; it's really he's got the movement on his pitches. And if you make me pick one of these guys and keep one of them, I'll go with Berrios. Because Toronto's they're going to give him the runs. He'll have run support. That stuff should be there, and that's I trust him. Kikuchi's the one. I've been burned. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I have been burned by this guy so many times before. And if he'll start out hot, you're like, sweet. Like I even wrote about my article this week at RotoWire. He's one of the guys. It's like in the first half of the season, his batting average is 245. This is for the career. Second half, 285. ERA goes from 443 to 570. Velocity goes down month by month. Like every single year, he comes roaring out of the gate and then just fades. And that was living in Seattle. I don't know, maybe if the travel got to him, but it wasn't certainly like he was pitching in some hot conditions where it's just melting him down. But his numbers in March and April, and then compared to the rest of the season, are night and day. And so to me, it's like, this is the guy. If somebody's hurting for pitching, let's say you just lost Taijuan Walker. Somebody has Taijuan Walker, and you're concerned about the right forearm tightness, or another pitcher, go sell this guy. Because this... he's had some velocity, but he's done this before. Then it wanes off, and then you're left with the guy that we've always seen crash in the second half. I don't believe he hasn't changed anything. You go look, he's still the same pitcher. He's doing everything the way he has always done it. And the big difference right now is when you were looking at pitch types when I looked at this, the league is somehow, the league is hitting 400 off his fastball with an XBA of 289. So it's like, oh, sure, there's a big difference, but 289 is not that great. It's the other pitches, the slider and the changeup both have batting averages below 185, but the expecteds are 50, 60, 70 points higher in this regard. And so there's a gap here, and he's given up a lot of hard contact and getting away with it right now. So I'll take my chances with Berrios, but I am absolutely trying to trade Yusei Kikuchi if I have him in a trading league this week. I want to get in front of the meltdown that always shows up as April becomes May and May becomes June with him.
Definitely different opinions here. And by the way, Ruvain, wasn't Jose Berrios your dark horse candidate for Cy Young this year?
Oh, you seem to remember. Okay, that's good. Yes.
Wow,
yes,
it's a lot better than my Blake Snell pick.
It was my bold prediction that he finished in the top 5 in this. I think it said top 5 in the Cy Young. He's turned it around. Listen, he's done it before. He's had a year and a half that wasn't good. Maybe he figured something out. There's always pitchers are creatures of habit. Sometimes they'll go through streaks where they're not good, then all of a sudden they'll figure something out, or they'll have a pitching coach or another pitcher on the roster will come and show them something, and they'll learn something, or they'll tweak it just a little bit, and that little tweak makes the big difference. His walk rate is down. I think that's the big part. It's down from 2.3 to around 1.5 this year. That's the biggest point. If you have less traffic on the base pads, then he'll give up less runs. If you give up less runs, you get more get more swings and misses. It's less contact. It's just a waterfall. Everything just keeps coming that way. As for Kikuchi, I keep saying I don't want him on the roster. Did you see what his strand rate is? His strand rate is not sustainable. He is going to give up more runs. As soon as things heat up and he's playing in Toronto, they brought the fences in. You want to buy a guy who has, like Jason said, very good in the beginning of the year, bad later in the year. They brought in the fences when things heat up. I don't want anything to do with him. Yes, 100% trade, but actually, you know what? I'd trade high in Jose Berrios because you never know if he's going to revert back to what he was last year.
Are you saying his 97.2% left on base percentage is unsustainable? How dare you?
I know that's a bit of a reach.
97.2% left on base percentage for Kikuchi right now.
It's crazy. It's just yeah.
6 strikeouts, 9 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts. I mean, that's not.
Well, what the last one was again. The last one didn't he have the White Sox? Everybody, you could strike out even pitching as softball style. I think he would still strike out 5 of those guys. But yeah, he had 8 strikeouts against the White Sox. They swing and miss at everything. And he had 9 against Tampa Bay, which was again that for Kikuchi that was legit. But I would also, would have to say if it's a lefty on the mound, that means he didn't have either Brandon Lau or Josh Lowe in the lineup. If he did, that's a strikeout advantage. And so the team has a different type of lineup against lefty pitching. But Kikuchi certainly looked good in that. I would give him that. He looked extremely good in that outing, gave up 1 solo home run in that game. And this last one against the White Sox, it was the White Sox. That's what he should do. But he did handle the Yankees. But like I said, we've seen him do this before. We've already had 1 meltdown and 5 good starts. Or 4 good starts out of 5 outings, but we've seen him get out the hot starts and just melt. This is the warning. Go out and move him. Let somebody else absorb the regression. You got more than you ever thought you were going to get out of Kikuchi.
So I said that he played the Astros. It was the Yankees is what I was thinking of. But
yeah.
In any case, he's 2 start this week at Boston, at Pittsburgh. I mean, if you're in a 12-team league, you're not starting that. If you're in a 15-team league, I think you're starting that. No.
Well, he's given up 6 homers. 6 homers. Maybe that's the strand rate because he keeps giving up home runs.
You're going to let him play against the first place Pirates? I mean, the Pirates are actually they're running. They have a good team.
He's on a good team, but he can get wins. No,
I understand that. The Red Sox I can understand, but he can go into Boston and blow up, give up 7 runs in the first 2 innings.
I would not want to touch. Boston hits in Boston. That's the thing. They do well in Fenway. The offense really clicks in Fenway. That's not a matchup. Like I said, there's a reason why I want to trade the guy this week. I don't want those starts next week.
All right. Well, let's see what happens. I don't know. My finger's on the push button of activate for him. I don't know. Should I press it? We'll find out next week what happens. Let's go to the waiver wire section of our show. That's where we talk about a couple of potential waiver wire pickups. Let's start with you, Jason. Who's somebody that you would like to pick up this week?
So I'm looking. I will give you a name from a 15-team league and a name from a 12-team league for hitters. And so for a 15-team league, because I mentioned earlier middle infield and some problems there, J.P. Crawford is getting hot. You look, he had a grand slam earlier this week. He's getting on base, and as coaches will say, it sounds cliche-ish, but it's the truth. If you're walking, you're hitting. He's getting on base. He stole his first base this week, along with the grand slam. Beggars can't be choosers up the middle right now, and Crawford's in a lineup that should start doing well. And so J.P. Crawford, somebody is sitting on the 15-team in my NFBC, in my TGFBI league. He is on the free agent pile. He is somebody I will be betting on this weekend. And in a 12-team league, catcher's always a mess, and Yan Gomes is doing extremely well right now. And he's only being rostered in half of 12-team mixed leagues, and he's having a great season. I'm surprised to find him on the waiver wire in my 12-team RotoWire online championship. So that's another guy that I'll be bidding on.
I don't know. I don't like I don't like disagreeing with the guest, but I don't know. The J.P. Crawford, he does this every year where he projects like, oh, he's going to steal some bases, maybe have a couple homers, and he just doesn't. I mean, his career high in stolen bases is 6, and his career high homers is 9, and they're not in the same year. I feel like he's a 250 hitter and just very, very unproductive. Gives not much of the counting stats, and he's batting 9th. And Seattle's not the best offensive team. I mean, sure, obviously the right depth, but I don't know. I feel like there's no upside also, right? Like at this time of year, and again, I don't mean to doubt your opinion on this, but like this time of year, I think you need a little bit more upside than a J.P. Crawford in a pick, and unless you're decimated by injuries and you just need something in the stats, I don't know. No.
Yeah, for me, it really the other factor is, like I mentioned, up the middle. Beggars can't be choosers. If you've been hurt, there's been a few middle infield injuries, and there, especially at shortstop, and there he sits. Like I said, he's hit ninth, but he's getting on base. I mean, the 18% walk rate, 407 OBP. The opportunities are there for him. Dylan Moore. Maybe coming back soon. He had a setback on his rehab. He had some scar tissue and that oblique injury, so he was due back last week, and now he's probably going to be out a few more weeks. So the playing time is still there for Crawford, and and who knows if Colton Wong doesn't get out of this ice cold slump, Colton Wong may lose his job, and all of a sudden we now have Crawford gaining more playing time.
Oh, he has
with
playing
more
time.
coming in.
Oh, yeah, he had 600 plate appearances last year. He had 687 the year before.
Mm-hmm.
They play him. Defense is good. But, yeah, and by the way, I think disagreeing and debating on the show is good for the show.
Echo Chambers suck. No, I'm absolutely fine with I'm absolutely fine with Echo Chambers suck. You don't learn anything in them.
Yeah, Ruvain, how about your waiver wire picks for this week?
Okay, well, I don't mind the J.P. Crawford thing because J.P. Crawford, even to give you an empty batting average, that's still a batting average. He'll still give you something. But anyway, I have 3 waiver wire guys. First guy I'm going to mention is a Red Sox prospect, Jarren Duran. Since being called up, he's 10 for 40 with a home run, a stolen base, and 2 stolen bases. He's only owned in 32% of CBS, and if you need an outfield guy, I know outfields can be very shallow. You want to take a gamble on him, he's a perfect guy to take a gamble. Another guy to take a gamble who's normally a good starter, but not that great of a finisher during the course of the season, and that's Connor Joe. He didn't have that great of a week this week, so if he's available, you may be able to get him, but he's still batting over 300. He's got a couple of home runs. He's got a stolen base. I guess you can play the hot hand because, listen, he's owned in 33% in CBS leagues, and 25% are starting him. So the fact that when people get him, they're actually playing him, so that shows something. And another guy who's only owned in 28% of leagues is Alex Kirilloff. He is due to come off of the IL this week, May 2nd. He could see some playing time. He's been hitting pretty decently on his rehab assignment. So he's a guy, if he's available and you want to make a kickstart at first base, he's a guy you may want to look at.
Yeah, I'd 2 things real quick. A follow up. One, if we were on video, I could hold it up because Connor Joe's name was one of the top ones that I had written down, and I'd started from the bottom, went with Crawford. So I love that. He even homered today. But the other thing to the Kirilloff coming back, the other name I would throw out there is Michael Brantley. He's close. Like if you're allowed to fab hurt guys, I know some leagues I'm in, you're not allowed to do that. But Michael Brantley's getting ready to head out in rehab, which means he could be back by next week. And when he comes back, Dusty Baker has shown an affection to hit Brantley higher in that lineup than he really should be. And if he can get higher in the lineup, it puts him in a nice spot for scoring runs. The batting average is there. That's what he can hit 300 in his sleep. And so if you can get a jump on Michael Brantley, who could be back next week, strongly suggest that too.
Yes, on Brantley, absolutely. He's always hit when he is up. And Connor Joe, absolutely. He's shown that he can hit in April and May, and then he is fading. But while he's hot, while the Pirates are hot, and by the way, we mentioned him earlier in the show, Jack Sawinski, I'd pick him up. He's 35% owned. In deeper leagues, I'm talking 276, 5 homers, 4 stolen bases. These are the same numbers that Andrew McCutchen is putting up this year. And, there's going to be regression here, but Pirates are looking good. He has the power. We've seen power in the past from him. He had 19 homers last year and only 320 at-bats. So the power is there. Will the average stay? No. He's a 235 hitter at best. But the power's there, and, the Pirates can steal. And he's one of those guys in the gang, or in the, what's the better word for a gang of Pirates? In the, the Bucks, or I don't know. I couldn't think of anything clever there. But
Gaggle? I have no idea.
And one other guy to mention, by the way, we did mention Gallo, of course, if he's available, pick him up. But Matt Mervis. Matt Mervis, very, very, very highly touted guy. He's just killing it in AAA. There is absolutely nothing that he has left to prove. I still don't understand why the Cubs, they signed Hosmer and Mancini. I have no idea why they signed both of them. I know Hosmer was like a league minimum deal, but Matt Mervis is 100% ready. He's got a 17% walk rate, 19% K rate in the minors. This is very similar, I think, to Vinny Pasquantino's profile. Oddly enough, we had both of those guys on our show this year. But he's definitely a stash you want because I think he'll be up sooner rather than later. And this is just a great pick. So,
I would. So here's my turn to disagree on the.
All right, I was waiting for that.
Matt Mervis, and this comes from a friend of mine who really watched the World Baseball Classic closely. I was in Atlanta with him last week, my buddy Jeff, because I know he'll tune in to listen to this. But he was saying like, hey, Matt Mervis looked overmatched in playing and some of the stuff he saw in the spring, and he wasn't surprised that Matt Mervis wasn't getting the. Is not up yet. Didn't buy night. We saw him in the AFL. So, those of us that were in the AFL in November, it was like, oh my God, this is great. But yeah, there's a reason why, when the Cubs got Eric Hosmer, you're like, huh? But then when they went out and got Trey Mancini as well, it's like, okay, maybe they see something that they want. They definitely want Matt Mervis to get some more baking time down in Iowa. So it's like when you do it, if one's a placeholder, two, there's a reason why they did it. When you put two names in his way, and neither of them are doing that great, and they're still in his way, there's clearly something there they want him to work on.
Yeah, no doubt. Obviously, there's something he has to work on. I don't know. World Baseball Classic. We're talking spring training here. Like I'm not gonna not pick him up. Of course,
but the good pitching. That's the thing. It's like the matter. It's a matter of that. So I
understand.
That's good. But like I said, that got my attention when they put two guys in his way. I was like, okay, Matt Mervis is way down my depth charts. I didn't get him anywhere, even in the wintertime, because the one was like, oh, okay, that maybe I'm going to lose April. But then the second guy is like, forget it.
Well, agree. And I didn't have him anywhere either. I didn't stash him anywhere. But I think now's the time that you might want to think, because right now he's free. And when he comes up and he's one of those prospects on the waiver wire, especially in the NFBC where, you can't bid on him until he actually comes up, he's going to be $300. In a league where you can pick him up now, you can get him free. You won't be able to get him free when he comes up, which I think is soon. Because he's just raking in AAA now, so.
But also Matt Mervis, when he was playing in the World Baseball Classic, he was batting cleanup. When he comes up, he's not going to be batting cleanup. He's going to be batting maybe 6th, 7th, or maybe even 8th. So I think there's more pressure on him during the spring than there would be in the majors.
He didn't really have any lineup support. He was on Team Israel. So, I mean,
Jock Peterson, that's it.
Jock Peterson, yeah. So, All right, pitcher preview. That's where we talk about some 2-star pitchers and key 1-start matchup. I used to play the drop where... just see who's playing the Pirates. But the Pirates are actually pretty good this year. I got to change the drop to who's playing the Tigers this week or something like that. All right. Well, it's not Yusei Kikuchi for you, Jason, but who are you picking up this week?
So when I was looking at 3 starts, I'm hoping I'm not taking anybody's. I wrote down 3 different names for this one, but so I'll go with the first one that way. And if you guys don't mention the other 2, then we can circle back to me. But one of them, the one I looked at, it was somebody I recommended a couple of weeks ago after a really bad start. And I said, man, if somebody has him in your league and they're willing to trade him, jump on him. And that's Hayden Wesniewski. He's got a 2-start next week against Washington and the Marlins. You can't ask for better than that. Wesniewski has pitched better since that blow-up start 3 starts ago. And so to me, when I look at the 2-start pitchers coming up for this week, he is at the top of the list for me.
Yeah, those are pretty good matchups. Ruvain, what about you?
I got 2, actually. I have Tyler Wells. I love these pictures from the Orioles. I seem to mention him every week. He's 23% owned in CBS. He's a possible 2-start at KC, at Atlanta. I love the KC start. I'm not so hot on the Atlanta one, but that's what it is. His last 3 starts, 18 innings, 15 strikeouts, 3 walks. I like those ratios. I know they're away, so it's not the best of matchups. But if you want to try someone, I mean, if you're willing, like I mentioned last week when I told people to pick up a pitcher who would get 5, I mentioned Dean Kramer. I said you'll probably get a win out of him, but you'll probably give up also 5 or 6 runs. Same idea with Tyler Wells. If you can handle that and you want the win at this early stage in the season, I'd say that's a go for it. Also, Kenta Maeda is supposed to be 2-start this coming week. He was sent for testing for his elbow. The guy they're going to bring up, most probably, is going to be Bailey Ober. He's only owned in 11% of CBS leagues right now. He pitched once so far, is at the White Sox. Seems like everyone's pitching as the White Sox. He 5 2/3, 4 strikeouts. He got the win. I'm sorry, this coming week he's pitching against the White Sox and against Cleveland. So he pitched once already, 5 2/3, 4 strikeouts. he would be a possible 2-start, but he's in the minors right now. So you have to hope that he gets called up either before the Fab or, or they start rumoring him to be, because otherwise you may just end up picking him up and he may still be in the minors.
All right, I'll throw one name in. I'll go back to Jason. But Domingo Germán, 50% owned on CBS. He's playing against Cleveland and Tampa Bay. Not the most fantastic starts, but I like the pitcher. He's got a 22.4% K-minus BB. That's a 31% strikeout rate. That's pretty good. And he's got that pairs with a 17% swinging strike rate, 33% CSW. The guy can strike out batters. Now, look at his ERA estimators. His FIP is 5.45. Ugh. His xFIP is 3.47, Sierra 3.45, which means he has a home run problem. For those who aren't familiar with FIP and xFIP, the biggest difference is xFIP assumes a league average home run rate. So if you have a much better xFIP than FIP, it means you've got a home run problem. He's got a 28% homer to fly ball ratio. Maybe that's lucky. Maybe he's a little bit more home run prone. But if you think he's unlucky, and he's had 5 home runs given up in the last 2 outings, then obviously there's regression better, and he's got the strikeouts there. He's lasting 6 innings every start pretty much. Pitches for a good team, the Yankees, so there's run support to get the wins. And, at this type of level, if you're picking him up to be your 7th starter, I think just having a good strikeout pitcher is sometimes fine. If you got the ratio help to combat some bad outings, he's going to give you those strikeouts. Those counting stats count, and the wins count. Wins are sometimes hard to come by. So I think he's a decent add in a matchup play. Like, depending upon the week, if you have him, play him in a good matchup. I think it's a good play to have him. Jason, anyone else?
Agreed. So the other 2 names that I had down, one for the same reasons as Wisniewski, is Drew Smyly, coming off the near perfect game. Thanks a lot, catcher.
That was
he's
terrible.
Got the same matchups. Oh, so bad. I was in Atlanta watching it in the Battery. I was like, come on.
You got a perfect game. Let's
so
just tackle
bad.
the pitcher.
So bad. Anyway, he's got the same matchups, and so there. And then I want to go with Luis Garcia. I know he got off to a rough start of the season, but like I mentioned earlier in the show, the Astros went on the road. I'm sorry, didn't go on the road, but they had Toronto at home, and Garcia pitched extremely well. Two hits over 7 innings, 9 strikeouts against Toronto, and then went to Tampa Bay, had a quality start, no earned runs, 6 shutout innings, and 7 strikeouts. Hasn't allowed a home run in his last 2 against 2 of the best offenses in baseball. So, and then this week coming up, he's got the Giants, who don't hit well, and the Mariners, who are up and down. So it's a really good 2-start there. For him as well. It's not like he's going to be sitting out there, but that's what your 2-start. So it's like one of these things where you're looking at lineup. I know his overall numbers may not look terrific this year, like 4 ERA, 2 wins and 5 starts, but those last 2 starts were really good. So maybe it's somebody you consider trading for. Smyly is probably still sitting out there on the free agent list. At least he was when I was looking at something. When I was looking at one league this week, he's still sitting out there. Garcia won't be, but maybe that's somebody you want to consider trading for while his ERA is still at 4.
Hey, Jason, quick thoughts on Tanner Bybee. He had a great start against Colorado, and he faces the Yankees this week, but he'll be against Detroit the following week. Are you into it? It seems like a great changeup and an enormous strikeout rate.
I honestly, this should be a rule of thumb for any fantasy pitch. If Cleveland's calling up a starting pitcher, get in. They have a phenomenal track record of getting their guys ready for the major leagues. Logan Allen looked phenomenal on Sunday. Bigby looked good as well. So Bybee rather. So they do a really good job. They have it's one thing Cleveland. That's one thing they're doing really well. They're not hitting this year. They're underperforming as a team, and it's frustrating to watch because I really thought they could do really well this year, but so far they're not. But the pitching, those 2 young pitchers this week is exactly what that team needed. But it should be a rule of thumb for folks. If Cleveland says, "Hey, you see a pitcher come up, get on them before anybody else does. Just get on them, pick up the move, make a drop for somebody because these guys are well prepared. They do an excellent job of developing their pitchers in their system."
But be careful. Be careful with Bybee because he's only had 3 starts at AAA. He was in AA last year, so he may still need some more seasoning. So you never know with these young pitchers, though.
True. All right, Ruvain. Injury report time. What say you?
Okay, we'll start with the catcher. We'll start with Mitch Garver. Texas General Manager Chris Young said that that Mitch Garver is going to be out for at least another month. He had an MRI that showed more than a significant sprain. So he'll probably be back in probably mid-May, late May. Jonah Heim is going to get most of the starts now, but also if you really need a backup catcher and for empty average. Maybe you can get Sandy Leon. Maybe he'll do some stuff there. Yohan Moncada was diagnosed with a protruding disc in his low back, which sounds like a disc herniation. He said, General Manager Rick Hahn said he is improving, does not need surgery, but is due to miss multiple weeks. So Jake Berger seems even more ensconced there at third base as long as he doesn't get hurt. Will Smith, the catcher from the Dodgers, should be coming back this week or hopes to come back this week, and he may be in the DH role only just because they want to ease him back in because JD Martinez is having back issues. They may end up placing him on the aisle because of a back issue that he got when he felt some tightness on the left side of his back when he was running the bases a couple of days ago. So that's just something to watch for both of those guys. Carlos Carrasco, he actually threw his first bullpen session, and if all goes well, he could return mid-May. And also, this happened today as we are on this podcast. Aaron Judge was taken out of today's game with right hip discomfort. He slid awkwardly, I think it was yesterday, into third base. Right away he ran into the dugout with his arm at an awkward angle, but it seems like that after an at-bat, he was wincing in pain. It may be a hip issue because it looked like he did sort of a belly flop when he did that slide. I'm not saying it's anything, but it's something just to monitor, and you have to watch the news and see what's going to happen with him.
Yeah, well, that's not good to hear. Aaron Judge, an injury. We knew he had injury risk, but, this is obviously a little fluky. Listen, I hope he stays healthy. He's a big part of New York and the team and that big contract there. So you got to fulfill it, man. So get back on the field.
Yeah, I was surprised he let that hand because that slide was ugly yesterday. When it first happened, it looked like that was going to be a wrist injury, and he was fine. But a
wrist or a shoulder. The way he said it was almost like a belly flop.
Yep, it was not pretty. That Garver news is certainly disappointing for me. I have Garver in 5 different leagues. He was somebody that I was hoping to get the 5 games of catcher out of real quick and have a really nice catcher. And he's got 3, and it may be a while. We may be waiting for the games 4 and 5 once he comes back from this injury, which I'm not expecting him back until June.
5 for like Tout Wars. A lot of home leagues. I know CBS it's 10. That's a lot.
Yeah,
more.
some other one of my home leagues is 3. One of it's 1. So it's that's the one I don't have him in. It's like that's the one I can't use him in. But I have him in both. I have him in both Tout and Labor. He was a target, especially in one of the other leagues I was in. I kept throwing out utility only guys. Because we don't have a flex, and it was just like, okay, here's UT, and I ended up with Garver later.
And
I got Yainer Diaz in that one. I'm sorry.
Francisco Alvarez, he's only utility eligible right now. Also, I'm in NFBC and I'm in TGFBI. He's not catcher eligible, so I'm waiting for a couple more games so he can get eligible also.
Yep.
Yeah, that's close. By the way, you guys see that reporter with Aaron? Speaking of Aaron Judge, see that reporter that got canned today for cursing in front of him? Did you see that?
I have heard. I've been in locker rooms. I've heard a lot worse from other people.
Caught on video though. This is caught on video.
Yeah, but I've heard a lot worse before, and it's not excusing it at all, but it is. I think it's a whole bunch of circumstances that come into play.
It was on video in front of kids while Aaron Judge was signing autographs. I think that's probably
the kids part I didn't know about.
There's a video out there. There's a video out
there. Yikes! Haven't seen the video.
They did not bleep anything out, so.
even Susan Slusser had some comments on it today on Twitter, and as somebody who she was, I don't know if she still is, but she was the writers. I forget the Baseball Writers Association of America. She was the leader of that at some point, but she's got some comments on Twitter today about it that are worth your read.
Yes.
On that note, thank you so much, Jason, for coming on the show today. Really good episode. We got down to the nuts and bolts of cold players, hot players, and everything. So thanks so much. Why don't you tell the audience what's going on with you and all things Jason Collette?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, guys. I always enjoy coming on the show. I see, like I said, daily I've been putting out some stats looking at how March, April stuff. I may take that into May because I am enjoying the morning, over a cup of coffee, looking at numbers and putting it together real quick on that. My Collette calls column at RotoWire went up today. It usually goes up Wednesday or Thursday. And I looked at, again, some of the absurdities that we're seeing with some guys are just like, how is this happening good? How is this happening bad? And is this sustainable? So that's going on. I'll be recording with Justin Mason, Sleeper in the Bus podcast on Sunday. We do it pretty much every Sunday unless there's like some major holiday like Mother's Day coming up. Probably won't be doing Mother's Day. But yeah, I'll be doing that. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Just really enjoying the new brand of baseball, the quicker games. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to see more baseball because I'm not stuck 3.5, 4 hours into watching my favorite team. Sometimes those games are over in 2:20. I'm like, hey, I could go put another game on. So it's like I said, I'm really enjoying this season.
Yeah, well, the jury's out for me. I want to give it a couple of months before I make my ultimate decision about all the rules and whether I like them or not. Hard for me to just say, well, 1 month. So I'm waiting on that. But now, point noted, it does seem somewhat enjoyable. And yes, you can follow Jason Collette at Jason Collette on Twitter. That's 2 L's, 2 T's. Ruvain, what about you?
You can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out injury updates as they come, next man up. I also have a weekly article on RotoBowler discussing all the injuries I discussed today, as well as many, many others, and the next man up as well.
I'm Ariel Cohen. You can follow me on Twitter at ATCNY. That's the shortest Twitter handle in all of fantasy baseball writers, I think. I beat Sporer. Beat him by a letter, right? And you can read my work over at Fangraphs, over at RotoBaller. ATC projections, rest of season are now up on Fangraphs, so check those out as well. And, of course, you can listen to me each and every week right here on the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. All right, well, that'll do it for the show. Once again, thanks so much, Jason Collette, for joining us. And from all of us here at Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.